couple guests today. We're actually, here together too. So this is the second time we've done a podcast like this. Pretty fun. we're all good. We're kind of talking about leadership, and let's go ahead and introduce everybody. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Go ahead.
I'm Heidi. I was invited on by Dan, as I have in the past.
Yeah, you've been before.
I've been here before. Haven't we all been here before? So
where else could you be?
Whose side are you even on? Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm Steve Wodowski. Dan invited me on, so I'm here.
Yeah.
And we go back to high school. Haven't really seen each other much, in the interim, but it's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
You too. I'm excited to have you here. You've been doing a lot of self-development stuff, and I've loved seeing you kind of throughout the years. I've sort of silently been watching from the sidelines,
fun.
And I dig like the stuff you do, man. I've seen your mountain running and stuff, and that's impressive as hell. That stuff's
I don't know.
It's gotta be so cold. It's gotta be so cold. But that's for people that don't know. Go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
So I do a lot of mountain endurance type stuff. A lot of that involves trail running. My specialty is alpine running, which is kind of a mixture of, let's say, scrambling / little mountaineering with trail running, all smashed together. So you might scramble a peak, you might have need ice axes to go up a curve, or and then you're running down, a 75-degree slope that has snow and ice on it, and
that's terrifying.
Sometimes
you're just up at the tip top up there usually,
Yeah, you're just kind of by yourself. I do a lot by myself. Partially because it's hard to find other people who are willing to
go run.
But also it's kind of like the solitude. I kind of just like the solitude of the mountain and myself, because then it's just a conversation and it's just really intimate, and you just have to be very present for every decision, because any slip, especially on certain types of terrain, can equal death really quickly.
For sure, yeah.
And I often like to go as minimal as possible.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Which is another reason why I like to go by myself instead of with other people, because when you go hyper minimal, there's other risks that come involved. And if you have someone else with you, then you kind of put them in jeopardy, and if they can't move at your pace, then it puts you in jeopardy, which means you can't be hyper minimal. So, and for people who aren't familiar with that world, it probably won't make any sense. But
when you're alone, you can take those risks where it wouldn't be as efficient with two or more bodies, or we want to try to be able to stay together with someone, or try to cross a place, or
sometimes you move slower. And if you're in cold, and so I don't mean hyper minimal, I mean you have trail running shoes, you have shorts, a little backpack, and maybe some axes, right? And that's it. Right? And so if you get cold or something happens, you don't have a lot of recourse, which means there's risks that you have to just take on. But it's not, I think sometimes from the outside people think that you're trying to take on risk. That's actually the opposite.
Right.
I'm actually very risk adverse, and it's really like you're playing a puzzle in relationship to your level of competency, and you're testing your level.
I like that.
Right? And so you're managing the risk. So you're going into situations that you believe you can manage, right? You actually have confidence you can manage, right? Because belief is kind of like a baby term.
Belief is a slippery slope.
You at least have a strong expectation that you can't accomplish a task without dying.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure. Or taking on that job or whatever, like, is beyond your
it's like it's the difference between knowing and thinking, right? Like it's the difference between walking into a room and seeing somebody's haircut and going, don't like that, versus don't say that, right? There's two different, and knowing you can do it is definitely different than just going, maybe that sounds like a good idea.
It doesn't necessarily mean you always know you can accomplish it, because there's lots of things. Because
you have faith in yourself enough to step up.
Confidence to know, like, to say no. Like, so the way I like to kind of describe the mountain is it's kind of like bull riding a little bit, right? You know the bull rider is going to get bucked off. The bull always wins.
Right, yeah.
Right?
It's
how long can you stay on, and when you come off, don't get kicked in the head
don't get trampled
while you're coming off, right?
Yeah.
So it's like this, you know the mountain's gonna win, and so you really have to, like, listen to the mountain. So there's a lot of listening involved, and it's this self-exploration too, because you don't really know yourself until you've been cold and hungry and think you're gonna die.
Or trapped and have to call for transport.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's unacceptable. You can't call for transport. You can only call for transport for clients.
We should use that on set, actually.
Pretty great, yeah. Oh yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine. But yeah, no, for sure. Like being in, if you've ever even on on a very much smaller level, going on a roller coaster, there's a sense of, like, once you're at the top of that thing, there's no other way down. Right? That's not going to stop at the top, and then you can hop off if you want, or like whatever.
Yeah.
And if that's the last ride that coaster's going to do, and the arm bars are going to give out that time, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, there is sort of, like, it's that acceptance, right? When you get to that acceptance point, it's like you said, you get to know yourself. Mm-hmm. When you get to the true point of, like, okay, like, that's when you know yourself, and it becomes very clear who you are.
Yeah. A lot of people think they're good people, or they're nice people, but a lot of people just haven't been cold and hungry.
Yes.
I'll eat you. Come here.
Exactly.
For real.
Most people just don't want to admit what they would be like in that situation.
Right, yeah.
Right? Which is interesting on two fronts, because one, what's the possibility? So let's say you don't actually have that capacity of mental stability, but when you see that you don't have the capacity, then you can see, well, what's the possibility that I could cultivate a greater stability, and what would that look like?
Yeah.
And what's the where could that go?
What would that? Yeah. Where would I need to take that? And where would I need to be to actually feel like I need to eat this person?
No. I mean in the moral way, but also in that way. But actually, that's an important way, though, right? Because you need to actually understand that what would it take? What would be the outer circumstances and the inner circumstances where I would be okay
eating another human,
or doing any type of terrible, what we would consider atrocity. Not even survival, just
no, for sure.
But what if they don't have the capacity to know they don't have the capacity?
Well, that's where most of society is. Yeah. Is that they don't know that they don't know, and that's a scary place to be.
Yeah. It's like,
because it's an innocent ignorance almost, right?
You see a bunch of bugs.
It's not their fault for not knowing.
No, it is.
But it also is. Yeah. It's not their fault for not knowing, because they don't know to look for it, right? And that's where we're faulted, I think, as a society. We should all push that more, like, investigate yourself. That should be sort of something we get taught in high school, right? Investigate yourself. Meditation should be taught.
Because at that level, you can train a little easier. The monotony of training and conditioning takes a little easier. Brave New World, 1984. I know, I keep talking about it, and he's like, shut up! very much, revisiting that whole like dystopia where people, are made specifically to a certain caste, a certain station within a caste system or whatever, and these ones aren't bred with the capacity for all of this, and just kind of seeing these are alphas, these are deltas, these are betas.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit crazy when you start to actually apply that to what would a human population look like if we chose.
Unfortunately, it would look a lot like it does right now.
It seems like we're going that way.
Yeah, we're headed that way.
We're giving up a lot of the things we've worked for so hard.
Well, and how do you brainstorm in that direction without sounding all eugenics Nazi, right?
Well, that's the thing is, there is no way to go down that road without going down that road.
Exactly.
And that's the irony, is I think a lot of the conversation has gone towards this like uniformity of diversity.
Right.
Instead of actual diversity, which means diverse thought, which means there is no being able to have conversations with people you disagree with adamantly, and still let your kids play together.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
It's this whole thing of like, you have to be uniformly diverse.
Yeah.
That's like the wrong way of going.
It's like the punk movement, right? Like the meaning the fashion punk movement, right? Like everybody looks a specific way.
It's like,
which is the absolute antithesis.
It's like a hot topic, right?
Yeah,
hot topic kind of sums this up, right?
That's exactly it, though. Yeah, that's exactly it. Because it's like, it's like, you're uniquely you, right? Just like everybody else.
Yeah.
and
you're special and unique.
Whilst there is a truth to that, but it's like it's a very subtle truth, right? There is truth to that, but that's the whole point of being such a unique thing, is that you're only you, just like everybody else is only them. And so there's so much diversity there that nothing's alike.
I like the Dalai Lama's answer that he constantly says. He's like, I'm just a simple Buddhist monk. Just a simple, ordinary human being, just like everyone else, right? Mm-hmm. But in that, there's so much possibility, right? For exploration, really truth. So within, let's say we're kind of touch on it for a moment, this honesty that people have, like, towards themselves and what they're capable of and what they're not capable of and who they think they are versus who they actually, their habitual patterns actually say they are, right?
Yeah.
So in Buddhism, there's this word ignorance, right? And oftentimes people think of ignorance like, oh, you don't know something. But really, ignorance means you're ignoring, right? What's the root of ignorance? It's ignoring.
You know
it's there.
You're not paying attention. You're actively
not paying attention.
Turning away from it.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
And that's the way I think oftentimes we function, because to actually look at the, like, so Carl Jung would have like, we basically say you have to go deep, right? Go where all the dragons, the demons, all of those things live, right?
It is.
Yeah.
So, and that's really terrifying, right? That's really scary, right? And you're probably going to come out a different human being in going on that journey, right?
Isn't that the point?
That is the point.
It's funny, nobody ever recognizes that that's what they're looking for. They're looking to change, but they don't want to
change. Can I do the exact same thing I'm doing now, but be different?
That's like I'll talk to people about about reality and about just like metaphysics and just stuff like that, and then they'll go, yeah, no, I understand, but it's like,
but can I keep binge drinking and neglecting my responsibilities? That would be great.
Yeah. Is that cool? Is that all right?
I think that's like part of the part that gets missed, especially in the new age type spiritual movements, is everyone wants this like free love, utopia, euphoric thing.
Like it's just this
you're just sitting on
place,
like a rock
this nice
in like these nice like full lotus, and you're just like smiling on the rock, right?
Yeah,
but that's not actually what it's like.
If you've actually meditated, then it's not fun at all. It can be. There's good there's great stuff that you get out of meditation, and I would consider very fun. But I don't know if everybody would consider
done it.
Yeah.
And you actually finally sit, and everything you kind of repress starts to bubble up.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's a different thing.
I don't want to think about that anymore. It's like, well, no, that's the whole point of this. You're going to think about this.
In order to arrive there where the happy things come, you have to go through a whole
You got to go through all the muck
scary
first.
shit. Yeah.
You got to go through the muck first. Because that's just sort of, as sort of the collective sort of societal consciousness that we've sort of built with our stories and with our leadership and with whatever, there's sort of this instinctive negativity, right? Like our mind is more easily swayed to eat up the negativity, and so absolutely you sit down on a cushion to go, okay, I want to see the truth of the universe. It's going to be beautiful, right? I'll be one with everything. and then the universe is like, you got it. I'll show you exactly that.
I'll give you a glimpse.
I will give
your
you
mind
exactly that. Yeah, and it does that. And it just shows you your little part first. That's always what it shows you first, is your little nasty muck, right? And you go, oh no, I don't want to see that. I want to see the truth of like the whole universe. You're like, right, that's the first part we got to dig through.
That's the only part.
Yeah, and that was exactly where I was going to get and once you get through that, you realize, oh shit, there's nothing else actually after that. And that is sort of it. That's the truth of it all, right? Is that there's nothing through your own muck. And once you can get rid of your own muck, like, reality's not a difficult place to be. It's actually a beautiful, awesome, like, dream, sort of, like, to just kind of exist in. And just, I love Tony Parsons talks about the ocean, right? Everything's just wet. And I love that description of reality, because it's so true. Like, this is so wet. There's so much wetness to this.
I don't know what that means.
I know, I'm sure you don't. That's fine. But what it means is, like, there's an ocean of consciousness. We just are in this ocean of mind, right? That's what reality is it's just a giant ocean of mind, and we're all waves in that ocean, right? The thing I call Daniel, the thing you call Stephen, the thing you call Heidi, and the thing that you call you is just a wave in that ocean. And when you can recognize, the ocean, because when you recognize a wave for what it really is in the actual ocean, like they're talking like the Pacific Ocean, right? You realize that the wave isn't a wave, it's the ocean. It's just a piece of the ocean pretending to be something for a second. And so when you can recognize the ocean sort of in the moment right now, like I can see it right now.
Yeah.
We're in it. This is the ocean. If you can see anything or hear anything or feel anything, that's the ocean that you're feeling. That's a wave. It's a piece of it, And like recognizing that sort of, I don't know, it gets rid of a lot of necessity to hang on to anything, because you recognize the ocean for what it is, right? Yeah. Like the wave doesn't worry about crashing on the shore.
Birds don't starve.
Yeah, they're not worried about it. Trees don't get concerned when they lose their leaves, because they understand there's no they to them. It's just the whole, which is just this. Right? And it's like we're always looking for something else. Well, what's the thing? What's the thing that I'm missing? Right? Oh, there's reality. Like, but what is that thing? How come I'm not seeing it? And it's like, well, it's because you're like trying to find it outside of itself.
Yeah.
That person in that part of their journey, they're gullible enough in that status where they are that they're gullible enough to believe somebody else when they say you're missing out on a thing.
Yeah, you're missing it.
Nothing.
You're missing it.
Being present.
People tell themselves they're missing out on a thing.
That is completely it.
They feel
that's
like
100% it.
It's got to be outside myself.
Exactly.
It's got to be over there under that rock.
Exactly.
It's got to be somewhere.
It's the thought that it's not
you've got
you.
To
be present, mind your footing.
I mean, so on basic premises of logic, right? If something's outside of yourself, by definition, you can never touch it.
Right.
Right? Which means that it has to be within yourself, right? And now, I can touch you guys. I can touch the table.
Wait a second. That means that everything's
it's part of us, right? Because you actually can't touch something that's outside yourself.
Right.
From the laws of logic, right?
Yeah. Well, even the laws of senses. Let's break down our senses. Where do they occur?
The fingers share the hand.
Like, clap your hand together, right? Where does that feeling occur? Is it occurring like a foot in front of me? No, it's intricately interweaved in with me. Like, it's that there's no separate. There's no the feeling and then there's me. The feeling and me are the same thing. Like, and if you do the same, you feel your arm. The feeling of you feeling your arm is no separate from you. Just like the vision of seeing my wall over here isn't 6 feet away. The vision of seeing the wall is intimately you. It's so you that it's not any distance from you. It is at 0 point. And all of the senses are that, you know. And when you realize that all the senses are that, you realize that it's all just mind. Like, and it can't be anything except mind. How could it be?
Yeah.
You know, and where else would it be? When else would it be?
But then comes the discipline.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So there's that side
realizing it doesn't mean anything.
That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, unless you're going to actually adopt that now into your
understanding how to employ that information in the training and being prepared.
And sometimes I think people utilize it to just reinforce their bad habits.
Right.
Go, oh, it's all mine. Well, there's no time. It doesn't really matter. I'm already enlightened, right?
Exactly. Yeah. See, and it's
no.
I've said it before. That's like you finished the tutorial. When that happens, you finished the tutorial. Now it's time to start the game.
That's why the Buddhists really have it on point.
Oh, I love that. It's amazing.
So you have mind training first before anything, right? And a large component of that is developing the attitude to be a benefit to all sentient beings, right? To be a benefit to all sentient beings. Now, take a minute to actually think about that.
Yeah,
what does that vow actually mean, right?
That's a heavy dose. Think about it.
You think of many traditions within Buddhism, not technically all of them, but basically all of them now, because all of them, even the Theravada, have also adopted some of the Mahayana structures. But so anyway, so you have that vow is base level, right?
Yeah.
You really can't go into Buddhism very far without encountering this vow to be a benefit to all sentient beings.
Then you have to
as long as sentient beings, but there's another part of it. As long as sentient beings remain.
That means forever.
That's interesting, right? So you think about that. Sit on that for a while. So then you think, well, why travel the path to gain awakening or understanding or wisdom? Then the answer is not to become wise. The answer is to be of benefit to all sentient beings.
Exactly.
Which is very different than I think oftentimes we take this stance of, I want to be wise so that I can know stuff.
Right, yeah.
And then I feel really cool about myself.
It's a selfish benefit.
Exactly.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Where in that scenario, everything you're doing is cultivating competency to be a benefit to all sentient beings.
For someone else, yes.
While recognizing this other thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I mean, ultimately, enlightenment is literally the recognition that there is no you. There's only other. But other isn't real.
And
which if you just caught what I said, basically means none of it's real, which means every bit of it is so important for you to respect that you even miss, respecting yourself. A lot of people will just disrespect themselves because they don't feel worthy, or they don't feel, loved, or they don't feel any of that. And, that's like half of the thing, is recognizing that you are part of that whole thing you call you anyways, is part of that whole sentient being thing. And you are that whole thing. You're not just that sentient being. You are sentience.
The whole thing becomes sacred.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's the trick.
Yep.
Well, and reducing your ego and understanding where it was supposed to be in the first place, and that it's meant to be a tool for you. That's why it came with the kit, right? So, but
yeah, it's important to not get rid of the ego entirely, because the ego does have use.
But it's
very important to not take it serious.
The ego has a simple functionality.
Yes, exactly.
It allows me to pick up this lemon, agave, hibiscus, wild basin drink and bring it to my mouth.
Yeah,
that's the ego's function, right?
The ego's function also allows us to sit here and see us. There's an us because of the ego.
But that's just a different abstraction.
It's
the same abstraction.
It's exactly right. Exactly. No, you're exactly. It's all story. Yeah. It's all concept. That's all the ego is. It's just a thought.
The modern
That's literally it. That's all it is.
The modern ego has been like disproportionately conditioned. A little bit
because it's turned into the negative side of you. That's what the ego means, and like that's not at all what the
but
ego
easy
is.
to manipulate.
Ego means self
from a distance, right? It's one of those tools where when they're talking about population control, herd mentality, groupthink, things like that. You appeal to the ego. You make something personal.
Yeah.
That's how in filmmaking you make it personal.
You make it about the self.
Yeah. You go to assassinate someone, you make it personal. Whatever it is. And so the ego is that place, right? You're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too tall, you're too blonde, you're too black, you're too whatever, and you're told that, or you
and we tell ourselves that.
Yeah,
it's like
you allow yourselves to believe
until you let go of the story. You let go of the story that society tells you. You let go of the story you're telling yourself, and then you can actually have some freedom.
Yeah.
And freedom to try. That doesn't mean that the world is fair. That doesn't mean you're going to get any special treatment.
Not at all.
In fact, it's probably going to be harder.
It's going to get worse. It's going to get way worse.
You're now going against the grain of the world a little bit because you're trying to actually be free, and the world is in its habitual pattern of slavery.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All creeds aside,
by slavery we mean mental slavery here.
We're bound in our own chains, right? We've bound ourselves in these chains.
They're all mental chains too, which means they're pretty.
Some are pretty chains, Some are made out of gold and jewels, right? And then some are made out of lead and rusty metals. Yeah. But they're all chains of our own creation.
Yeah.
And so, you're always a slave until you can let those go.
Acceptance, man. Acceptance that's what's so beautiful about meditation, right? It's literally the practice of acceptance. it's going, I don't want to do this. I don't know if I can do this. And then going, accept it. and then hearing, I don't want to. This is really stupid. I want to get up. And we got other stuff we could be doing. And you go, accept it.
It's only
the mountain.
Accept it, just accept it.
You're up on the mountain, you're in a chute, you've got, 1,000 feet below you. And
it's only uncomfortable until you accept it.
A vertical slope.
Yeah.
You're not sure if the snow is going to slide out or a rock's going to fall on your head.
Right.
And you're starting to think, I wonder if this is such a good idea to be up here alone in shorts.
Did I tell anybody was here?
No, and in fact,
I remember talking to him, but did I? Because then that's another neat feature that kicks in too, is delirium. Am I remembering correctly right now, or am I remembering incorrectly right now? Because you don't know, because your mind's completely discombobulated, and it's all about being able to put your attention where it's necessary, right?
Yeah.
For instance, being
and that
here on this mountain and not going,
how do I get out of this situation? Exactly. You go, nope. I'm here.
One step at a time. And how do I make my next step?
Later,
That's what's up.
Yep. What's the next
step now?
How do I keep my focus right here, be safe, and keep the composure? And then you're always assessing, is it safe to go up? Should I go down?
Right.
But that's not from a place of emotional response of let's say fear,
Right, like I'm scared, I want to go down.
You're afraid. Yeah, it's like, it's not from a side of like mental collapse, like your psyche's like collapsing and it's just like, I can't deal with this anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's emotional, maybe in the sense of intuition from years of experience, right? Or time in the mountain, and you're thinking like, you can kind of have an intuition of like, what might be safe, what might kill me.
Absolutely.
And you're always thinking that the mountain is trying to kill me.
Right. Well, it's
not because out of malevolence, it's trying to kill me out of benevolence. It's given me the opportunity to overcome its challenge of trying to kill me.
That's beautiful.
Right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But while you're listening and not overriding it, because sometimes the mountain will say no.
Yeah.
And that's when you go, okay.
Yeah,
and you go right back down.
It says, I'm not in the mood for you to come on me today.
And sometimes it's sneaky. And sometimes it's like, you could come up. You could.
Right.
And then you're like, I could. And you're like, it's like, yeah, come on. You come up. Yeah, come on. And then you have to have that discipline of, no.
You're trying
I'll come another day, right?
That sounds like Charlie Sheen in the grotto at the Playboy Mansion.
But yeah, no, and that's sort of like, that's not even just something that occurs while you're on top of a mountain. That happens daily.
Yeah, it's the same experience
every single day.
It's just heightened there. It's just that's why it's beautiful there, because it's like distilled down. But it's everywhere. That's the way normal life is. Actually,
it's every second of life. This conversation right now, right? It's the exact same thing. It's do I chime in with this topic? Do I stay silent? Do I move? Do I bring this up? Do I not bring this up? What am I talking about here? You know, it's all about choice and consequence. That's just sort of it, right? Give and take, cause and effect. That is what reality is. It's a giant cause and effect machine.
Yeah, it's like a wave function, like an interdependent wave function matrix.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So you have all of these infinite sets of waves, and they're all interconnected, and yet they're stacked together in matrices.
Yeah.
Right? So depending on your perception, that's the place in which you tune in.
Observation and perception, that's what creates reality. It's the observation of that moment to read where in the matrix, okay, this is the piece of information, and to take that and in your interpretation of that information, your perception, how you end up dealing with it. That's not the same way that he would deal with it or you would deal with it. Pulling out that exact same piece of information based on our perception. Right. All of us in the same car accident will have a different experience based on the car accidents we have or have not been.
See, and that's that ego that we're talking about, right? It's the filter in which reality is experienced by reality. Yeah, it's like reality takes position to experience itself. Like there's not you trying to get into this suit so you can experience reality, because that implies that there's actually a separate reality somewhere else, and that doesn't make any sense, because what would that mean? That would mean that this one's not real, right?
They're all real simultaneously because they're all happening all at the same time.
And so where's your access to them?
In this moment.
In this one.
It's only right here.
It's only the window of now that you have access to any of them, so it doesn't really matter.
You're observing right now. Yeah. The alternative is observing that moment, and that moment is real to that iteration of you, and so on throughout the bubble.
Well, that's even breaking it up even more down to it. And the thing is it's just realizing that it's all just one solid organism that never ever dies and is always just been. I can't say been something. If I say it's been something, that's lying all of a sudden. I mean, even me saying it's been is lying.
Do you have the bomb first cause?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then it's just entrapment first cause. There's a way around it.
The chicken or the egg, right?
There's a way around it. There's no need to get into it.
Both of them, absolutely.
That's probably too much.
No, that's what this show's about, man.
But when you're talking about
it's all
values,
about diving deep,
right? What you see, like your perspective, like that's an interesting thing, because you get an insight into your habitual patterns and what you value, because you are only going to perceive what you value. right? So in that car wreck you mentioned, right? Mm-hmm. Hopefully no one gets in a car wreck.
Right.
Knock on wood, right? Everyone's
but ego conditioning.
Hey, we're patterning the matrix for beneficial cause, more conducive to us moving forward in uncompromised ways. So
it's true though.
It's true
actually,
though. No, it's true.
If you that's why I love art. Art gets left behind. Life keeps going. Once you die, art is seen by life, which means that in order to change life for the future, do stuff now. And if you do that, it literally shapes the future.
It becomes your legacy.
Because it's what you get to remember later. Because it's all just you.
That's an interesting topic. So you're an artist, and you play mostly music. Do you do painting as well?
I do a lot of stuff. Yeah, I do painting too. We actually just did a pour paint on the Perceived Media channel. My first pour paint. It's fun. Cool. But yeah, I do.
I'm so ignorant of painting, I don't know what that means.
It's just like we poured acrylic paint essentially with a pouring medium, so it kind of like meshes together. And here, let me go grab it actually. It's right here. And
kind of like a marbly effect.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Marbly, is that a word?
Yeah, I think so.
Can you use it in Scrabble?
Can you use that in a sentence, please?
Oh, pretty.
Yeah, we had a good time.
Kind of looks like butterflies over there, and
right. But yeah, basically we pour the paint in the cup, and then it layers in the cup, and then as you pour it, it sort of does this
thing.
This thing,
like it's all kind of,
which is very abstract. And if you want to check that video out, go check it out. It's on the channel.
Don't tell me what to do.
I'm talking to the audience, Heidi.
I am the audience.
That's true. But yeah, I do all sorts of art. I do, I film stuff. I play music. I'm actually in like 2 different bands that are active right now.
42 bands.
But one of them is a synthwave project, and the other is a rock band.
Cool.
The synthwave project's been different and fun. I've loved it. It's
super cool.
Quite different than what I've been used to doing. But
different as far as the medium, or different as far as the culture?
A little bit of both, actually. Yeah, I mean, usually I've kind of always sang and played guitar in projects that I've been in. In this one I sing as well, but I'm playing pad, like drum pads.
Oh,
so that right over there, actually.
Okay.
You can see my pad. Cool. But I'm playing drum pads in it, so that's been it's been funny, because I've always said ever since people ask, "Oh, what do you play?" I've always been like, well, basically anything except drums. Yeah, the theremin. I would.
I totally would sit in the hallway during lunch and just playing your guitar.
Yeah. Me and Tommy would do that. Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't worry about anyone else.
No,
you were just in the hallway on lunch, just playing the guitar.
Yeah, music.
You were in junior high, I think, too. Mm-hmm. I think you started in junior high. If I remember right.
Yeah, I think so. Nerd.
Well, all of us were running around.
I know.
Like little chickens.
Doing your thing, and I'd just be sitting there playing.
All day, doesn't go to class?
Yeah, never went to class. No, I went to class. I went to class. I failed all of them. No, just kidding.
I'm sure you're more studious than we were. We went skiing.
Yeah, I mean, I would not go to school too. Of course, I just go home and play music. Used to what?
We used to go to the Wagon Wheel a lot.
Okay,
the Wagon Wheel before the Spin Cafe.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's crazy that it's like they're still there. They're still there and like still doing it. Yeah. I worked at the Spin Cafe when it first opened.
I didn't think they were gonna make it.
I know. I didn't either.
Some gelato and Eber.
I know, right? It worked though. It worked. But that was kind of my thing though, as I'd play acoustic and stuff, and I still do that. Like I still play solo every once in a while. I just came out with a reggae album a couple years ago, which was interesting. It was different than I was anticipating, but I was like, I wanted to do a reggae project, and my friend was like, "Well, just release it as you." I was like, I guess I could do that. I was like, that's not really what I've been releasing. And they're like, so? And I was like, when he said that, it was kind of like an eye-opener for me. I was like, I guess that's true. Like, I don't have a label telling me that I have to release like rock or like I have to release acoustic or I have to release any sort of genre. Like I can release whatever genre I want. I'm my label.
Whole album of potty training.
Yeah. Right, yeah. That's my next one. So.
Pretty functional.
But yeah, no, I released.
Cat owners out there.
Yeah. I released The Days of Irie, selfless plug, or shameless plug, selfless plug, selfish plug. Shellfish plug. But yeah, I recorded that and was just like, that was sort of the beginning of kind of my dive into. Yeah, it's funny using the word enlightenment. I don't like using the word enlightenment because if you have ever, quote unquote, experienced enlightenment, you realize it's not real. So it's sort of a joke to make you chase your own tail, which is.
I think if people think it's an outward thing, but it's actually an interesting word.
Yeah.
So if you think of like the function of, I believe there's a lot of embedded meaning that we don't recognize in everyday words.
I believe so too, yeah.
Absolutely.
Is like hidden treasures in plain sight, and let's say our collective unconscious, using Jungian terms, right, has embedded this substructure there, right? And we don't recognize it. So when we think of like enlightened, that's actually really interesting because that's not outer light.
Right.
It's enlightened. Yeah. So it's actually closer to inspiration, empowerment. Mm-hmm. So the fire within, right? Mm-hmm. So when we break down words, like go through the etymology of words, we see these substructures, right? Compassion is an interesting one can dive into, but we'll stay here for a while. So it's not what people think, but that's okay. So when you think of like enlightenment, to have the light within, to be empowered. But what happens when a fire happens on a log? When the fire comes out of the log, is released from the log, and that's kind of a hippie statement there, right? But the log is consumed. Right. But the light hasn't gone away. Right. The light is still traveling. The light it's still the thing. So it's this interesting thing. So the thing is, going back to what we were saying earlier, it's not outside. Right. It's an inner thing. Yeah. So it's an inner recognition of something that's always been the case, and that's sort of the why I say like it's the recognition that it doesn't exist. Yeah. Right? It's you realizing that nothing's actually changed except your perspective on the situation. Yeah, you can see the room. Yeah. You're not in a dark room anymore.
See the room.
You can see the room.
And you know where the light's coming from. Well, it's the marriage of both
trying
of
to get people to get out of the cave, right?
Yes, exactly.
The cave of the allegory to travel
Plato's
within.
Cave.
And people can't I have to go outside to go in. And that doesn't really make any sense. But in order for you to be free to move about in the true light, you have to leave this tiny little isolated outlier, this tiny little cave that you're inside when the whole rest of the world exists. But if you never leave that cave, that is your world, because that is your perspective, and no one can tell you otherwise either. You'll die on that hill.
Well, it's like telling the light, to go find the light in the room, and the light goes into the room and looks everywhere except for itself, and once it sees itself,
then it lets go.
It goes, oh shit, never mind, and that's why enlightenment is enlightenment, it clicks word. And then you drop it.
But it's used so often that it's become cheap.
It's like God. It's like the word God.
Yeah,
the word God is a completely misunderstood
the word too. Love.
Yeah, it's interesting, and one can get into the theology of this, but and the different traditions and how perhaps they undercut themselves, especially in the West.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even talking about how they talked 2,000 years ago, right, when they wrote heavens and God and
Well, and the interpretation of parables and the language.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And the linguistics.
Exactly. It's like you've got all these
language.
Analogies, as well as, you know, the analogies as also getting lost in translation.
Yeah.
I don't think we think the same way. I have this like hypothesis.
That's probably accurate. I'm pretty sure
I don't
nobody
even think we use the same organ to think. I'm actually being serious. To some degree. I have this hypothesis that older tradition, like outside of, in the West, we've cultivated using this organ primarily, where older cultures, especially in the East, and the native traditions here, if you ask, where they thought, they always have pointed their chest. Mm-hmm. If you ask, you know, where's the mind? No, it's here. Mm-hmm. They don't point here. This is the body. So it's actually really interesting. Like, I don't think we use the same organ of perception. So when we think, obviously, you know, I'm getting circular now. Of these translations, right? Mm-hmm. And the way we've translated them in the West, are they actually even truly representative?
Yeah, exactly.
And how can we then access them based on that? Perhaps. Because they could be wrong.
See, and
that can lead you totally astray.
I think that the best way to do that, right, is the only way you have access to do it, which is to do it. Like, do it right now. What do you have access to? Your mind, right? Which you would call your mind. I would call it everything. I mean, that's what my mind is. My mind is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at you, which means you're my mind. This table is my mind. The air between us is my mind. Like, all of it's my mind. So I wouldn't point anywhere, because anywhere I point, there would be, you know. So I think that, you know, Western, you know, philosophy definitely doesn't catch that at all. You know, it's definitely very, very.
They like to luxuriate in their own thoughts.
It's very structured and it's got a narrative, and it's got.
And very rarely present though, because they're questioning the future or a hypothetical something.
Right. Well, it's something outside of themselves. It's always something outside of themselves. You know. Like, I love talking to Christians that are super, super wrapped up in the fact that, you know, God, my dad, is watching over us. That's fascinating to me, because where? You know, if you ask, okay, well, where is he watching from?
Everywhere.
And if you really, really are honest with yourself about that answer, the only answer you have is, well, from my perspective, from the one that I'm like assuming God is watching.
Yeah.
It's this one. It's this one. So, but he's watching from somewhere else. It's like you just missed the whole thing.
Maybe
that thing's you. You know.
So in one way, I agree. In another way, I have contention, because not everyone can view things in certain layers of abstraction.
Right.
So what's functional? Does it, by them believing that and living their life in accordance with that, is their life, let's say, better?
Right.
And in that, is their family life better? Is their community life better? Right. If that's the case, then I'm 100% on board.
I agree. I agree with you, yes.
So I'm very tempted to.
There's not a one size fits all.
You know, one person's way of doing things is another way. Christian or, you know, whatever, you know, tradition one goes for.
And don't
how does that function?
Yeah, don't.
And I know you're just looking at.
Don't misinterpret what I mean. Right? Yeah, because I'm definitely not meaning that, you know, just because that person, you know, sees the world that way, that's an incorrect way to see the world, because that's not true. Their way of seeing the world is just as valid as my way of seeing the world, which isn't as valid as I would like to admit, right? Because nobody likes to admit that their own viewpoint isn't actually valid. But it's the truth. Right. It really is. I understand that too, that my viewpoint is just that. It's just a viewpoint. It's not the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter can only be accessed by you or by me, whatever. But by the thing that's hearing this right now, whatever you want to call that, that's the only access you have to it. So how you interpret that is on you. Also another thing that I'll ask Christians is when you pray to God, who answers? Because there is an answer. And if you're objective about it, you recognize that the answer is that thing I was just talking about. That you can call you or I or me or whatever you want to call it, but it doesn't have a word to it. Yeah. Once you put a word to it, it starts lying about it.
So maybe it's something more subtle too.
It's very subtle.
It's like
this is a super nuanced thing that I'm sort of talking about.
It's hard because to really lay it down.
That's why I say nothing. That's why it's a discussion on nothing, right?
3 hours to begin to lay down one structure. Let's say if you're just talking about one system, right? Just to kind of get there.
I'm sort of talking about the whole screen that holds all the systems.
Well, that's a 10-hour preface.
Exactly. But that's what I'm always diving into, right? That's what this show's all about, is diving into that.
Faith, though. And faith can be secular. Faith is in each other, in ourselves, and
faith is king.
Cathartic.
It's faith that you'll wake up tomorrow to do something. Faith that you will survive.
And be the difference between.
It's the faith that it's the faith that this podcast will even finish. That this conversation will come to an end and a meteor won't come crashing through.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
The roof, right? But it's seriously,
don't tease me.
Without that faith, what do we got? We got nothing.
And when
There's no
lose
point in us doing anything right now if there's no faith that will be, right?
Yeah, faith is interesting. It is. You don't really get very far without it.
But that's another word that tends to get lost in the.
It gets lost and it gets kind of abused, and I think also in the West we're also irreverent about it. It's like we don't want to have faith in someone else because we don't want to. Perhaps
be at their mercy.
Yeah, be at their mercy.
Be in debt to someone else.
Yeah, perhaps.
It's no human alive will honestly tell you, "Oh, I love being vulnerable for you right now, or with you right now." That you don't love it. That's not a thing that you love. It's important. It's very important, but it's not something people love. You can learn to love it, but instinctually, yes, exactly. You can learn to love it, but it's not something instinctively just there.
Well, I don't know that you learn to love
in this society. In this society,
the opportunity.
In sentience, it like these guys. You don't have to teach them that.
Yeah, faith.
They get it. They understand.
Sometimes I like to give the analogy to people who are like really skeptical about faith. Like, if you never saw snow. Because there's different levels of faith, right? If you never saw snow and you lived in a country where you didn't even have books of mountains with snow,
right?
But there was a traveler who came through your town, and he seemed competent. He seemed like a trustworthy guy, right? And he told you of this thing called snow. It's like water, but it's frozen. You don't even know what frozen water looks like. But he's like, it's water, but it's solid and fluffy. It's like sand, but fluffy.
Hey, wait, this is cold. Just like The Alchemist. Because you have to, the perception is that this individual is wise, right? That label again.
Right.
And so you believe everything.
Yeah.
Whether, and sometimes, just like magicians, the amazing Randy always says, I tell you I'm going to bamboozle you, and then you let me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
that's what most
you allow yourself.
Most enlightened teachers will tell you that. Like, there's no point in you being here right now.
But here's the other side to it, right? The other side to it is, let's say. So that's the dark side, right? That's when faith is misused, right?
Yeah.
When people try to utilize it to manipulate others in a negative way, right?
Ego conditioning.
But in the positive way, let's say he's trying to inspire this kid, right? To see something bigger. And he's using the analogy of snow. And then he says, you can take sticks and you put them on your feet and you can fly down the snow. right? And this kid is just like...
He's like, he goes and gets twigs. He's like...
Right? He's like in a dream world, right? And then he goes away. And because he has this character had credibility based on, let's say, his honest appearance and action, the kid believed to some degree. He doesn't totally believe, but he has some level of faith, right? Some belief that this is possible. And then he sees a picture. He's in a library in another town, and he sees a picture of snow. Not even skiing, just snow on a mountain.
God, it's true.
But it's drawn. It's not a real picture. It's artwork.
It's somebody else.
And he goes, "Oh, maybe is this snow?" And the librarian says, "Yes, that's snow." And then he makes a quest to travel to a place where there's snow, and then he sees it. And then he makes it to Utah, to Salt Lake City, to Park City, and he sees people on sticks made of fiberglass and wood and steel,
and it clicks.
Mixed together, and he sees them flying down the mountain. And he goes, "Oh my, he was right." And then he goes, "Can I do that?"
Yeah.
Right? So that's the teacher's role.
Yeah.
Right? He never told him how to do it. He never told him to. He never said He never drug him there. Right? He couldn't force him.
But he could
open a door.
Yeah.
And then that person can walk through it. And that faith is a thing that allows that transition from doorway to doorway to doorway.
Well, we have a lot of these people coming to describe the different doorways of snow in our lives, right? But some people will be like, I was told never to,
they'll shut
it
the
all
door
out because it goes directly against, even when it's like you could be trying to help someone and, against their own best interests, they will, no, I cannot, I will not. And just completely, that again is ignorant, because you know that there's a problem here, and a rational person would be like, oh my God, I'm in danger, or whatever, whatever the situation is, accept this help. The help is there for a reason, because you need help in this moment. And some people will just go against that every single time, because again, they've been manipulated or conditioned at whatever level. Imagine some of these people that get their whole life, and then they discover whatever about whatever their individual faith or organization was, and they're like, wow, this is I know there's a whole lot of people here locally that are kind of having that shaken faith or whatever.
But I mean that's it though, right? Is there's such an adverse response to radical thought, right? That's something that's sort of like we've almost backed ourselves into a corner by like sort of accepting science and going, science has got it figured out. We know for sure this does this because this, and it's like, well,
well, it's not that rigid though.
I don't really know if that's that true.
You can have more faith in knowing that it's a system of testing, and hypothesizing.
Exactly. If you treat it as such, right? Yeah. That's super important. Is realizing that science is literally like the whole point of science is it's always trying to disprove itself.
Well,
like
we've
that's
seen that with this pandemic. With this pandemic, people are like, they have no idea what they're talking about. Like, no, you're watching the scientific method in progress.
You're literally correct. They don't know what they're talking about, so they're trying to figure it out.
We don't usually have to see into the
what's going
kitchen.
on right now,
you don't usually see into the kitchen to see what's going on. You just, this vaccine or this surgery, this treatment for the thing. Yeah. Or whatever the culmination of that scientific determination is, and then first but I read a meme.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Fuck myself then.
Well, and that's why it gets so difficult, right? Like when I say we're talking about nothing right now. How do you talk about nothing? Well, it's simple. It's what everything's made of. So, meaning if you talk about anything, you're actually talking about nothing. But that's such a radical statement, and that's such a radical mindset and paradigm to look at the world through, right? That most people go, I'm not, that's just crazy, you're crazy.
It's without restriction.
And it's a funny word because, sometimes people think nihilism, right?
Right, yeah. Right. And that's not
what you're necessarily referencing, because nihilism wouldn't,
It means that non-existence is it, and that's that. And I'm saying that non-existence is non-existent. Like, there is no such thing as non-existence. The only thing that is non-existent is the concept that you've made. The concept itself is actually existent, though, because if you're thinking about the concept, there it is as a thought, existing. But that's all that exists, is the thought of it, not the concept itself.
It's still your observation of it, though, right? It's that snapshot. It's that moment. It's that one tiny little bit of information.
But even that, it's just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I mean, relative consequence.
Yeah. Right.
It's a seed.
Consequence in the Matrix.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Like if I tip this table up, right? It's not like my hand's just gonna go through it because I feel like it. No, like there's rules that this game follows, just like any video game you play.
Yeah.
You know, there's rules to the game, and you have to obey the rules. You can mod the rules, meditate.
So in the brilliance of, let's say, the Buddha structure, right? You have two truths. One is the absolute truth.
Yeah.
And then one's the relative truth.
Yeah.
And there's an infinite set of relative truths.
Yeah, guess what?
Fantastic. And all of them
are the absolute truth.
function because of the absolute truth.
Exactly.
Right? So
it's more like a sliding scale.
It's kind of beautiful because it doesn't box you in.
Right.
You don't have to refute in the same way. You don't have to refute into eternalism. You don't have to refute into nihilism.
Right, yeah. Well, it's it's that balance,
middle way.
Yeah, it's that balance.
And if they're all true, then that creates the equality. If true is the thing that stands out against everything else, that is all true.
That is the beauty of it.
It's all the same.
That's why I love saying, like, unconditional love is a beautiful way to describe what reality is in its truest, like, most pure form. And it's just that. It's unconditional love. It is complete, absolute allowance of whatever. So much so that Hitler was able to kill a shitload of Jews, which is horrible, don't get me wrong. But it was allowed by reality. Reality allowed that to occur, which is utmost love, whether you accept the ridiculousness of that statement or not.
I would spin back to what we were talking about earlier. People don't recognize what they're capable of. And because they don't recognize what they're capable of, it unleashes the demons.
Right.
It allows them to not recognize why they need to be so disciplined in virtue and cultivate virtue. And when they see unvirtuous actions, they go, it's all right.
Right, yeah.
Right?
Not my problem.
Or when the wolf starts to knock at their door, they go, okay, I'll acquiesce a little bit here. But really what you're doing is degrading the system. Moment by individual choice. Like, every choice you're doing going on that road walks you a little bit closer to the other thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because people can say, there's neutral ground. I don't believe there's neutral ground. Either you are moving forward or you're moving backward.
Yeah.
And
there's no
neutral ground because people have too much momentum of their habitual actions. So the habitual actions are either going to, and because most people, they have more negative habitual actions than positive habitual actions. If they aren't disciplined, the negative habitual action takes over. And then resentment just flourishes.
Right.
This is why every time someone tries to build a utopian society, all the people who are kind of virtuous get murdered really quickly.
Yeah.
Right? And because what it gives is this excuse for these people who have resentment in their heart and don't think that we don't, right? Because you think you don't, you would just be one of the people who would run around.
You're blind to your own fucking shit, and you can't be blind to your own fucking shit. You have to see.
And then your shit.
Being nose blind to the cat box in the room, and then bringing somebody else into the room.
Right, yeah.
But sometimes, then you still don't believe that person now. Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of the remarkable thing we've built, is this ability people can talk crap on the Western system, but there's a lot of good things about it, right? And to poke at the blocks too much is dangerous, because only the reason that people are able to even think about poking at the blocks is because it succeeded so well.
Yeah, because the blocks are in place. That's the thing. Is it's funny that you say that, because like what I keep seeing this meme on good old Facebook of this guy sitting on a branch of a tree, and he's sawing the branch of the tree because there's another guy on the other end of the branch that he's like trying to I want to cut this guy down, and he's gonna cut himself down, right? And it's like, that is literally where we're at right now, as a society over here in good old US of A. And it's scary. It's really scary, because I don't think people realize how close we are. Like, it's funny, all these people are like, oh, we're going to lose our freedoms. It's like, you're going to get rid of them. You're literally going to throw them away because you're trying
leaders that are going to do it. Yeah. No. It has nothing to do with them.
It's all what
you're doing in your individual life and the decisions you're making. Yeah. On a daily basis. It has nothing to do with those people.
But see, you're trying to convince them in like a couple of minutes where you know everyone that's born
where they have 20 to 60 years of preconditioning before that,
and and the complicated human experience in between all of that conditioning, just to make a unique experience,
which can times it from 5 to fucking 5,000, right? Depending on your experiences you've gone through. Some people have gone through ridiculous shit that no human should have to even go through, and they've gone through it over and over. Oh, absolutely.
That's most of the
time, because they've become so at one with acceptance, right?
It's a different level of acceptance.
Yeah, and forgiveness
is the key to the door.
Absolutely. Well, forgiveness and acceptance, you know. I know it's sort of rounding it all up into one like little thing, which is impossible to do, but like acceptance, you know, is really important, because without acceptance, forgiveness, you're not going to come to forgiveness, because you have to accept whatever your forgiving needs, right, in order to achieve forgiveness. So acceptance is sort of it's like I've said it 1,000 times, acceptance and gratitude is like the truest form of prayer.
Yeah, gratitude is the key to fend off resentment.
Absolutely.
That's why it's a strong virtue.
Yeah.
Well, gratitude isn't always, I think it's sometimes people misinterpret it as just being grateful for the things that you have.
Thanks for my stuff.
No,
that's not. It can always be worse. Gratitude.
And that's like, you know, that's the conditioned version of gratitude. That book series, The Secret, that's that approach. Is to be grateful for what you have, and it can always be worse. We talked about The Secret
actually on the last episode. Yeah,
if you need a book to tell you how to be grateful, that means you're not connecting with all the other sentient beings.
Yeah.
Messages lost in relay.
I was going to say The Secret there is a message there, but the problem with The Secret is that most people think you can just approach The Secret like, you know, Joe Schmo off the fucking street. Oh, let me read this book and my life's gonna, you know, get solved. You have to approach it like after you've done that tutorial we were talking about, like recognizing the shit parts of like it all, and then recognizing the beautiful parts of it all, and having it all click. That's sort of the first part, and then you can go check out The Secret, and maybe you'll get some juice out of it. But like, until you've gone through that tutorial, The Secret is just going to be this like ridiculous
it's going to be lost. It's
in your head.
And you're performatively going through those things.
You got to do the work.
You do have to do the work.
You can't just have like, I'm going to be the greatest thing in the world.
And I'll just think about that over and over and over.
Right.
And it'll be fine.
That's not manifestation.
Doesn't really quite work. No,
you have to become it.
What if I put it?
You actually have to be it. You literally have to feel it inside of your very being. The thing that you're being has to become what it is you're looking to
And some people
manifest.
Never come to that understanding either.
Well, it's because it's like the way it's sort of promoted, right, and the way it sort of was shot and released, and it's on Netflix, and like you can watch it, like it's like, but it's this like, oh, just think about it. You just gotta think about it a whole lot. You think about it for 12 hours straight, and guess what? It doesn't work that way.
That's the meme of the guy going, it's free real estate.
Yeah,
because it is. If you're spending time thinking about some commercialized gobbledygook, you're not having organic, unique thought.
You're not doing the work that it's telling you to do, right? Like,
but you'll need the sequel to continue the work, right? Because the work never ends. Just read The Alchemist and move the fuck on with your life, you know? Like, read all of these books, and the more you take in, you start to see all the similarities, the grain of the overall picture, and all of the I don't know, excess within any kind of theology. You start to see kind of the human truths out of the parables, the fables, the stories, the scripture, the whatever it is. You start to see the truth, because there are some universal truths. But you can't see, it's like what is it, the seeing eye thing, not the seeing eye thing at the mall, whatever, the picture, right? You have to cross your eyes a little in order to see the thing.
Yeah, magic eye.
And it is there, whether you can get your meat suit to focus on it or not, and it doesn't mean that it's not real because you couldn't see it, but everyone else can.
Right.
Like
it's just like the Gestalt cube, right? I'm getting my next tattoo that I'm getting is going to be a Gestalt cube, which is the cube, right? It's a 3-dimensional cube with a cube inside of it. And so what you're seeing, like, and I love asking people, I point at one of the walls and I say, is this wall inside or outside the cube? And it just changed. Like, so it's both. And it's like, right, meditate on that, like sit on that. It's both. Catch the importance of what that means, right? It's both. It's not one or the other. It's both until one or the other is picked, right? And that's sort of
until it's observed. That moment.
And that's sort of
wavelength or a particle.
Yeah, it's the same thing as like nothing and everything. It literally is. They're both the same thing.
If it's all the truth,
this is nothing. Like, it doesn't make sense, sure. All this stuff, right? This table, these mics, the air, the people, the dogs, the windows, the blinds, the ceiling. It's all everything, right? Like, we're talking about everything, yeah. And that everything is actually nothing.
Sometimes I feel like that conversation is fun. The unfun conversation is, how do you do the work?
Right, how do you do the work?
And I think going back to gratitude is having great gratitude also for the difficult things, the challenges, the pain, the things you didn't ask for that suck. and honestly looking, what is the fortune in this? And finding a fortune in it, even if the only fortune is that it made you pay attention.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Oh, how fortunate I was to be able to slam my hand on the door. I was really not paying attention right there.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity to recognize that.
For sure, yeah.
Right? And I think in Western society, we've become victims of our own success, and where everything's so easy. And this is, again, the mountain is so nice because it's like one of the last bastions of there's not comfort. So when you go up there, you don't have like a McDonald's or like a Chili's,
Right.
You're up there.
No.
Yeah.
Is this not America?
You're up on. Yeah. Is there not one up on the top of the mountain?
Are we in America? There's not a McDonald's. I can't tell.
You're tired, right? You're not sure if you could physically go on, but you have to.
Yeah.
Or you're going to spend the night, and it might be cold.
And then you'll freeze to death.
You might freeze. Yeah. So you kind of have to just get your shit together.
Yeah. It's the difference in the kids who go to the climbing gyms. Yeah. Someone who's always in a climbing gym as opposed to someone who's out there
climbing.
I can't talk shit on the guys that climbing. There's a lot of people out climbing there. Yeah. All day long. I'm not that great of a climber.
Those things can be pretty brutal, yeah.
My specialty is with my legs.
That's what she said.
I can go up, I can go up hills. And I can do a little climbing, but there are people who are phenomenal.
Yeah, it's insane. I've seen like 3 climbers that do the
and out there
gym
too.
that are just like, it's like, oh my
just
God.
like partnership, it's not a competition either. Because if you compete against someone in an extreme environment, even not so extreme, you just are falsely confident, in the spirit of competition. Again, be present, mind your footing. Because if you're, I'm going to get on this person just the same as this storm is moving in faster, how do I protect the person that's down my line? It's distracting. You're not in that moment. Right. You can't stop that storm.
Yeah.
You can't freeze that person 10 feet ahead of you. Excuse me. But
I hear an eagle.
May have been a pterodactyl.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, being present.
There you go. Well, that's important.
Yeah.
And you stay grounded. I think sometimes that conversation is really fun, but how do you just stay grounded?
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like, okay, that's fine, and you can recognize that, great. But I still have to drive the car.
Right. Yeah. You can't just give that recognition all your attention, right? Yeah. I actually had that recognition the other day while I was driving. No joke. No joke. I was like, and I sort of was like, okay, yeah, I'm just and I sat down into and I was like, oh, I can't do that. I was like, oh, wow. Because I was just like, oh, wow. I started becoming wondrous to the wonderment of it all, which is what happens when that kind of happens. You go, wow, this is really amazing. I started doing that while I was driving, and I was like, oh, I gotta pay attention. I can't fully become everything right now. I actually have to be this thing.
Which is where it goes back to, I think, that orienting principle, right? What's your orienting principle, your orienting motivation? If you don't know what your orienting motivation is, you don't know what your orienting value set is, right?
Yeah.
So this is where, again, I'm definitely gonna plug in the Buddhists a lot. So where they really shine,
I'm good with it.
is the motivation is to be a benefit to all sentient beings. That's the orientation. So everything else is to function that.
Yeah.
Right? So great, you have that recognition. Fantastic. Now you're in traffic right now. How are you gonna be a benefit to all sentient beings right where you are? And there's a guy about to cut you off. What do?
Let him in.
Exactly.
Let him in.
Slow down. You can recognize this come in. So why not slow down the car and just
become a benefit.
Allow your mind to go.
Yes. Exactly.
Just go, come on in.
Yes.
And then you reduce the systematic risk to everyone around.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Now, in self-control, you're almost kind of controlling your frequency as well, right? So when you're giving off vibes or whatever you want to call it, that you're affecting everyone around you, whether in traffic or whatever, that if you're getting hyped up, you're probably going to pass that on to someone else.
Definitely passing that on to someone else.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's no probably. That's what's happening. That's how
we've all gotten wrapped up to where we are right now.
Exactly. Exactly. That is why you are sitting where you are right this second. Yeah.
If your practice doesn't, how do I rephrase it? If what you're practicing doesn't make you a better person while you're washing the dishes, you're doing something wrong. If it doesn't make you a better person when you're in traffic,
right,
you're doing something wrong.
Right.
It should be making you a better human being. And that doesn't mean higher. It means lower, like the Dalai Lama. I'm a simple human being. That's it.
Yeah.
So when you recognize that, am I more calm, stable, joyous, compassionate, right? Aware in what I'm doing. And can I do that while I'm washing the dishes?
Right.
Can I do that when I'm...
Can I do that while I'm driving?
Can I do that on the mountain? Yeah. Can I do that while I'm on Excel?
Yeah. Can I do that when my business partner's not here? Can I do that? Yeah.
Can I do it when my teacher's not watching?
Right. Yeah.
What does my mind look like when it's just me?
Yeah.
And then be honest about it.
Yes.
And that takes discipline.
And that's why it's uncomfortable.
That's why it's the unfun conversation. The other one's fun because that one's actually easy to see. The hard one is that one because you don't see it without the discipline of doing it. And it's not like, oh, I had this thing, okay, now everything's good, all my habitual patterns are gonna go away. No. That means
you better
3 seconds later from that moment, right, you're gonna be in a different situation, and all of a sudden your buttons are gonna be pushed for those negative habitual tendencies, and all of a sudden you're gonna be the person you just said you weren't gonna be 3 seconds ago. So, well, that's not a lot of discipline. Well, where was the mindfulness, right? The awareness of where you are moment to moment, and when that starts to rise, just demand it being into being. Sometimes we forget the benefit of just demanding something into being.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to have my mind stable. I'm going to have my mind stable with compassion and loving kindness. And when you start to see that negative habitual pattern arising, you go, no,
exactly, yeah.
Right? And then you go, where are you going from? And you look at its root. And then you see its root, and then you practice that exact same thing, loving kindness and compassion at that root. It now becomes fuel for your practice. So simple, right? But it takes discipline.
Right.
And then slowly, the psyche becomes worked out.
Love it. I love it. And you thought this was going to be bad. No, I'm just kidding.
Who are you getting? Some crazy mountain like he runs around in snow?
She's nothing of the sort.
I'm just over here quietly listening. Nodding thoughtfully.
Why doesn't he have pants on? It looks cold. There's no one... That's a peak. Why is he wearing pants?
Yeah, man. I remember the first time I watched you do that, I was like, this dude's lost his mind. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you.
For losing your mind.
But, that's actually not a remarkable talent. The only reason I do that is to show that it's possible for everyone.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not that remarkable. That is everyone's capacity.
Yep.
And with a little bit of training, you could do more than that.
Yep. Exactly.
Right? I mean, how many people have to show us what's possible before we go, all right, and then we take responsibility for it? What has Wim Hof done?
Yeah.
Right?
Wim Hof's amazing.
He's amazing.
Yeah. Wow.
Right?
You know who Wim Hof is, right?
I do not.
He does cold, really cold water breathing techniques. Like ice. Cool. He's the Iceman. That's like his
name is the Iceman. Yeah, for a reason. He owns, let's say, of the records for being in cold exposure, he owns them by a long shot.
Like 90% of them.
He ran through the Himalayas with no shoes.
Yeah. Dude's
He's ran through the Arctic with no shoes in shorts.
Yeah. And that's another thing too. Like I remember
he's fantastic.
One of my friends, right? I think it was probably December, or it was probably even earlier than that, maybe November, but it was cold. Regardless, the point is it was really cold outside.
Yeah.
And we went hot tubbing. We went and got in the hot tub, and we had to walk. Like the doors to get in, right where the hot tub is, were locked. So we had to walk around the apartment building, right, to get back in. And I remember as we were doing it, I was like, and I was like just cruising along, and they're like, oh my God, they're freezing, right, and just shaking like crazy. And I'm like, breathe. I said, just breathe. I said, focus on your breath. Don't focus on the cold. Focus on your breath going in and then your breath coming out. I said, only focus on that.
Yeah.
I can't, man, it's too cold. Right, breathe and focus on your breath.
The voice of the psyche collapsing.
No, man, it's too cold. And I made it just fine. Yeah. Over to the other side of the apartment. My buddy was over there just freezing, right? But it's like, it's so important. If you breathe, like, it's like, how do you move a mountain? A stone at a time. Breathe. If you breathe, it keeps you centered because you're focused on something that can't not happen now. Like, it's the one thing that doesn't ever change when it happens. It's happening now. Yeah,
it orients you to where you are.
Exactly.
Very great.
Yeah.
And when you tighten up, all of a sudden, what are you doing? You're tightening up your whole vascular structure, right? What are you doing when you're tightening your vascular structure?
You're gonna make it
you don't have blood. What's keeping you warm?
Yeah.
Blood. So relax.
Exactly.
That's part one.
Yeah, loosen up. Drop all your.
Never go into the cold in the first place.
No.
Because that's me.
You don't want to get hit by a plane? Yeah. Don't go outside.
Well, no. Like, I don't even like to be in the air condition, so I usually don't even put myself in that situation. I don't like air blowing on me, but it's because I'm neurosensitive.
That's actually a really good point, though, right?
And understanding that boundary and honoring those boundaries. Like, I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm going to be a burden on someone else or not do honor to myself and my capacity. I don't have to go do this thing that is unbearable and unpleasant for me. My value can be over here. I don't have to prove anything over here, but
a lot of people get stuck in the idea of I have to do this so that so and so will whatever, right? And so it's a lot of people are they miss I say it because I've been there, right? I've been that person, and I've missed, had I not put myself there in that situation, around those people, around those things, I wouldn't have actually been anywhere outside of, I wouldn't have been in that situation at all. I would have been outside of it because I didn't put myself in it. So that's a huge thing. Yeah, it's sort of knowing knowing your limits,
knowing your boundaries. You got to stay within your competency. You can test the limits of it, but you test it responsibly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
But pushing one's boundaries in a controlled way, I think, is healthy because it shows what your mind does.
Yeah, you need to.
In those places where you don't want to go.
Right.
All the goods are in the places where you don't want to go.
That's where the juice is,
yeah.
That's where the juice is.
No one ever had to walk through the park to save the princess, you know? Because the dragons, you have to go into the mountain, into the gold pile, and wake the dragon.
Yeah. How many allegories and stories are there of this?
For real.
For sure. For sure.
But who's listening?
But that's that right there is it. How many allegories are there of this? Shouldn't that tell you something about this, right? I don't mean you. When I say you, hopefully you get that I'm talking to you, the one that's listening to the podcast, right? Because that's the whole point of us being here, is we've sort of gone through different things in life in which we can discuss this stuff, right? But I lost what I was saying.
Allegory of dragons.
Yeah. The allegory though is no, I see. I lost it again. What were we talking about just before that?
There's always that gap, isn't
always
there?
Always that gap.
There's the fact before
that's
the
where
last
the goods
one.
are.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Is in the cavity of your memory.
The juice is in sort of recognizing that there's a core to all of those allegories, right? There's a core teaching to all of it. And the core is that it's you. If you recognize that you're the only one who has control over your quote-unquote life, right? If you're going to call the life that you're living yours, well, guess who's in control of it?
Your inner world.
Yep, only you. So you can no longer say they. You can't say them. You know?
I know some people might be upset with that one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A lot of people, wait. No, I'm cool with it being like, you know, like with there being like a truth or whatever, but it's not me. Like, I'm not the one who's caused all my problems. That couldn't possibly be the problem.
Wait, isn't that American exceptionalism, right?
I don't know. There could be something fun to that. In a way, there is an exceptionalism. Everyone wants to be here for a reason.
That's true.
The truth's in the pudding.
That's true.
Why does everyone want to come here?
Yeah, what's your purpose?
Why have we grown so quickly? Why have we generated more wealth and liberated more freedom for individuals in the last couple hundred years than the last 5,000 years?
Yeah, for sure.
There's something to it. And it's fun to poke at it and joke, but at the same time, there's something there that we need to appreciate, and we don't appreciate it, it's going to go away. And don't think it can't go away like this.
Yeah.
Right?
Shit's disappeared and no one's even noticed that.
There are people that want the head of the mantle.
Yeah.
If we want to be the head of the mantle, we have to take responsibility for being the head of the mantle.
Yeah.
Right? China's sitting there right now going, we want to be head of the mantle.
Right.
Right? We are going to be the patriarch of the world.
Right.
We have a 100-year plan. We've laid it out. And we're working for it diligently. Right. And we're over here scrabbling amongst ourselves.
Yeah, like plan, and we're in the middle.
And we just have to ask ourselves, nothing against, Chinese, but do we want to have that style of government?
Right.
Or do we want our style of government?
Right.
Do we want it because it's ours or because it's right for us?
But really, these are the questions to be asking, right?
What do we want?
What do we want?
Is it the same thing we've always been trudging through, or do we want to use a moment, a precipice for change, and can we veer our ship in a direction that helps us move forward and not just, because within the American system, there's so many great ideas, but there are so many shitty people who are being able to interfere with that system, and really,
it's always the case.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's always been that way. Yeah.
It's the archetype that you have. The chief advisors of the king is always trying to kill the king.
Right, yeah. to take the king's position.
To take the king's position. That's always the case, right?
That's
why
right hand.
The moral virtue is so important for the individual. Because that protects against that.
Right.
And that's that. I kind of hark back to that all the time because I really believe that's where the juice is in that simple, and not like highfalutin, like you hold it over people's heads, right? Because those are the most dangerous people. The people who tell you that they're really virtuous, but they're really probably the worst people in the world.
Probably if they're virtuous, they're not telling you because they're so humble and have
I was gonna say,
self-esteem issues.
Well, that's the thing, right? If you recognize the truth of I guess the beauty behind, the raw truth of being an asshole if you need to be an asshole, or being,
you're send a rabbit against a dragon.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Unless it's the one from Monty Python.
That is
yes. Or the one from Twilight Zone. You guys remember that one?
No.
That one was crazy. It was Twilight Zone, the movie. It was the Twilight Zone movie. It was a big old scary one.
But it's also learning how to cultivate that, right?
Right.
Like, how do you cultivate the side of strength when you need it?
Right.
Jordan Peterson, he was looking at, so there's like this quote, it's often done for the Bible, the meek shall inherit the earth, and he was looking at the different translations for it and going through. And he came up with a translation that's a bit different. How he came up, I don't exactly know, but it seems to actually be quite a bit more fitting. The one who knows how to wield the sword, but keeps it sheathed, shall inherit the earth.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So there's that humility
Absolutely.
that you kind of associate with the meek, but it's a different sort of thing.
Right.
It's, you know how to use the sword, you can protect yourself.
But you choose not to.
Well, you might you might, if it needed be, you can pull out that sword, but it's to be of benefit to others.
Right. It's not. It's not to help you. It's to help someone else.
To not draw when someone cuts you off.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
Before you cut them off, literally.
Right.
Just a flashbang.
It's interesting. So I think, but we have to recognize that we have to take that responsibility if we want that mantle.
Absolutely.
Because someone's going to have the mantle.
Yep.
There's not going to be like no one's going to take the mantle.
Right. Yeah.
So we have to decide, do we want the mantle or not?
Mm-hmm.
If we want the mantle, and with the mantle comes some freedom of dictating our values, right? Do we really believe in our values? If so, maybe it's useful to have the responsibility that goes along with that.
Right, yeah. And it's getting that all figured out, right? And that's sort of where we're at. And I think we are. It's messy.
It is messy.
It's messy, but so is growth. Growth is messy. Yeah. Growth isn't fucking comfy. Like if it was comfy, everybody would be doing it.
We have a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah.
So many things have been opened up in this last little bit.
Amazing point in
that's the upside.
It's also dangerous.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's the most
amazing. It can go one way or the other.
Absolutely. That's
do
why
we enter a golden age or
like,
not?
Yeah. Do we enter it all or do we destroy it all? Right. It's like there's no going back. That's for damn sure. And there's no going back.
Well, there's been no going back for a while.
Yeah.
I like this analogy. You know how eagles nest really high on cliffs, and the mother eagles push the baby eagles out of the nest.
Yeah.
And they flap and they're
like, oh god, okay.
And if they don't learn how to fly, they just turn into like, pink on the rocks below.
Right.
Baby bird,
we are that baby bird.
Yeah. No,
right.
And we've been pushed out.
And we're out of the nest. And we're falling off the cliff, and it's not like we have like 1,000 feet to go or like 500 feet to go. We've got like 10 feet to go.
Yeah, we better start flapping.
Is our moral discipline equal our technological capacity? That's the question. If we can,
I think we
equal it.
We have the ability.
We have the capacity for sure.
Yes,
but can we cultivate it?
Right.
And maintain it?
Yeah.
Otherwise. And the wisdom that goes associated with that. Otherwise,
some of us can, some cannot, and they're usually the ones who are in control.
Everyone can.
But we need that 3 standard deviations deep.
Yeah.
Not in the positive, on the other end of the spectrum, right? Because whatever is 3 standard deviations off the mean, that's what we're like resorting back to.
Right.
That it's like the weakest link in the chain. Mm-hmm. Let's go back deep.
Let's go back there.
Let's get really deep. And let's cultivate some like joyous responsibility. Because I think sometimes we think responsibility is like this heavy thing.
Right.
But how can you be joyous in your responsibilities?
Right.
Like, that's interesting.
That's a good way to approach it.
You know?
Absolutely.
Joyous in your diligence. Joyous in your dedication. We forget that part of it. The joyousness.
Right.
Because it's not heavy anymore. You don't have that baggage of, well, I should be doing this, I could be doing that. Oh man, I really messed that one up. I was a real dick there. I should behave better. I could have behaved better, but I really chose not to. Right? So instead of having all of that, you have this calm. And so that you think of like, again, like for the Buddhists, you have the Eightfold Path, right? Well, what's the first 7 of those? Get your life together.
Right, yeah.
Kind of sums it up.
Yeah.
Get your life together. And then we can begin to work on some of the other stuff. But until your life's together, you got right speech, right mind, right livelihood, right, etc., right? You don't have anywhere to stand, or better yet, to sit on a meditation seat.
Right.
Your life's in total chaos. You have anxiety everywhere, and for good reason.
Yep.
Right? Because your life's not in order.
Yep.
So how do you...
You can't go... What's that thing? You can't go... throwing your negativity everywhere, or littering your negativity everywhere, and then expecting to live a clean life.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah, throwing banana peels everywhere.
Yeah, and just it's fine. It'll get fixed. It's fine. It's fine. It's not my problem. It's not my problem, right? That's sort of where we're at, and it's like, well, no, it is. And you're the only one who can fix it, Just like I'm the only one who can fix any issues in my life. You're the only one who can fix any issues in your life,
But first it has to be true to the individual, and it's not true until it happens to them, or somehow they're emotionally in tune to where they can glean a learning experience from another's actual experience. But how often does that happen, right? Or else we would learn more from books.
It definitely happens. I mean, it happens when it's supposed to, for sure. Because, the universe will make it happen when it needs to happen, for sure. You don't have a choice in that.
I used to think knowledge could be gleaned from books.
You can learn info from books, but you can't learn knowledge unless you experience it.
You got to go through it.
You have to actually
go through it. You can gain pointers on the road from other people and books, but that's the starting point. Yep. You have to go through it. You have to
it's
get
the story about the snow.
It's empirical. It's empirical investigation.
Yeah, exactly. It's the story of the snow, right? But before he understood the snow, he had to go see it, and then he had to learn how to ski before he could understand the second part of the story.
Yeah, I've often used the analogy of honey. I can explain to you what honey tastes like, and I can say something like it's thick syrup water that tastes kind of sugary.
And I go, what syrup water
is that? But until you taste honey, you have no clue what honey is, and it's the same thing as when I talk about nothing. I can tell you. The entirety of all existence is nothing, and that's what you are. But until you actually taste what the hell I'm saying,
right? How many people have said that same thing? And everyone's like, "Oh, okay, that's great."
Yeah.
But what about?
Yeah, exactly. Until you taste it, it doesn't mean anything.
It really doesn't mean anything. Yeah. And actually, I think holding that up as something that should mean something, in a way, is kind of a problem. Yeah. Again, it's the easy thing because it's not hard to see. Right? It's the thing that's so apparent. But then what? The after part. Right. The after, or the before. Right? And what's that orienting virtue? And I think of the hero, the archetype of the hero.
The hero's journey.
Yeah, the hero's journey, right? And there's two types of heroes. There's mundane heroes. There's transcending heroes, right? Mundane hero would be let's say Hercules or something like that, Achilles, something like that, right? Or a transcending hero archetype would be Jesus or Buddha, right? Krishna, right? They're transcending because they transcend the matrix. They win at all games simultaneously, and yet aren't part of the game, and yet are the game, right? Yeah? It's like the eye of the pyramid. It stands above the pyramid. It wins all levels simultaneously, right? Where mundane hero archetypes win game sets within the structure, relative game sets. But even if you're talking about a mundane hero, what's their core virtues, right? They're courageous in the face of adversity. They strive to engender competency for the benefit of others. And they seek truth. Right? Simple. Right? The transcending hero, there's an added component, but no one even doesn't matter, right? The first level is plenty. Get that down. Right. Because everyone wants the good stuff. They always want to jump to oh, that'd be so awesome to do that. Okay, well, if you want to do this, you need to train
all this.
This for this amount of time. You need to get your breath down. Oh, what do you mean get my breath down? I thought we were doing mountain work. Okay, well, you got to get your breathing down. You mean we're going to breathe in the mountain? No, I mean you're going to sit in your room and you're going to do breathing exercises in the dark. Yeah. Or a podcast on, I don't care. But you're going to do breathing exercises.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's well, I didn't think I was signing up for breathing exercises. I could do those on my own. I know. Yep. I told you that from the beginning.
Yep.
But now you're paying me, and I'm telling you to do breathing exercises.
Oh, if that's not a Zen master, like, in a nutshell. Like, well, there's nothing to learn here. And then they go, all right, I'm gonna come follow you. You're gonna tell me that for like 10 years, okay? He's like, okay. I'm gonna smack you a couple times with a stick too. Hope you're cool with that.
Because I'm not that smart or that talented.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the truth of it. You don't seem to hear me telling you that, though.
But now
I have my small experience,
religion, right? And you're a bishop, and they're just a member coming to you for help. And whether they're going to listen to that actual, like, I've done this before, so this is literally what you need to do. I don't know.
I don't know about that.
I don't know. That's where that faith thing comes into play, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, Bishop, kind of thinks the Mormon church, right? I like the Mormons. I think they're awesome. They're so cool. And I really actually mean that. Because, in a way, I think they're like the rejuvenation of Christianity. So, old Christianity, what was the whole point? Because Christ is a title, not a person. Embody Christ.
Right.
What did the Mormons do? They try to embody Christ. They believe that they're going to become Christ. Right. So they work towards that end. So they live their life as if they're going to become Christ. That's very different than, I believe in this person called Christ, and now all my sins are absolved.
Right, yeah.
That's an abdication. The other is, I want to don what would it be like to don the title of Christ? Oh, what does that mean? Oh, I've got to bear the suffering of the world? Oh, now we get into a conversation about compassion.
I don't want to do that. That doesn't sound
They don't become Christ. They're saints gods in their own right.
Can I do like the cool stuff instead?
Because they don't believe in the whole, like, one collective, like we are all the same frequency and energy and everything. So it's like they're peripheral gods, like sub-gods to...
Yeah, they get... I'm not a full scholar on Mormon traditions.
I was unfortunately
I know nothing about the religion.
I find that there are really great individuals within any school of thought like that,
Agreed, yeah.
And there can be some really nice things, but I mean, when you go to the inception of what the whole thing was, and you realize the whole thing started in deception and manipulation and with a con artist and stuff, it kind of like steals validation of what I think the organization stands for. Like, I'm gonna lie, cheat, and steal, I do as I say, not as I do, but that doesn't mean that there aren't like genuine, moving lessons passed down from individual to individual, or to have a profound experience. But just like with any religion, with any faith,
there's always challenges. Any organization's gonna have their challenges.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, because they're filled with people, and people have challenges.
Yeah.
So
it's a bunch of perspectives not being the same.
Right. Yeah. Well,
which
it's
can be good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's literally what the universe is made of, is a bunch of different perspectives.
Yeah.
So
they do great work though. Look how organized Utah is. Look how organized Salt Lake is. It's fantastic. We're the only place, let's say, state or social pocket, right? Enclave, let's say large scale enclave, right? Because there's a few million people, right, in the state, that could be self-sufficient if everything else went away.
That's true.
We have the second largest
That is true.
We have all the power we need. We have all the minerals. We have all the manufacturing. We have all the fun and recreation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is there something we don't have? Nope. We have all the banking. We have the industrial banking. We're the industrial banking capital of the United States and de facto the world. We are also the second investment banking capital in the United States. People don't recognize that. Main Street's full of all the investment banks. They just put the names up.
Nice.
Right? So we have everything.
Rather talented at financial hoarding.
It's fantastic. How organized, how peaceful, it's so many great things. So many positive things.
But not diverse, that's for more so than in some points in the history, but it's still very, very homogenous, culture-wise, socially.
I don't know, but that's in a way part of the success. And I don't mean that like there is a tradition, and that tradition has boundaries, and that's why the tradition is successful. When the tradition loses its boundaries, then the tradition goes away.
Then. Huh? Then you turn into Palestine and become the victim of the outside trying to swallow it in, even though, you know, that's a notion that is spread worldwide, because, I mean, that becomes like a whole other issue too. But, you know, when you try to maintain, this is just for us. I mean, not everything.
I don't think it's just for us. I think when we're talking about like, let's say religious things, right? I think sometimes people feel like, and I have definitely been this way for a large part of my life. Let's give the goods to everyone. Just make them plain. But over the last few years, I've changed my thought on that, or my feeling on it, to no, some things are best kept secret, and you shouldn't give up the goods to people who don't do the work. Do the work first, and then maybe you get some goods. And then you realize I really don't know any goods, and I told you that from the beginning, but you know, I'm not very smart or right? Or talented, so my goods probably aren't that great, but what I've got, you still got to do the work. It's got to come and show up and do the work before I'm going to give you my simple goods, right? And I think that is so important when it comes to traditions. And I think that's one of the strengths of the church, is they maintain this inner world, and there's an outer structure, right? They're happy to function in the outer world with other people, right? My dad did business with the church. He's not Mormon for decades, very amicably, right? But they keep their inner world private. Unless you're part of the church, you don't know the inner world. And if you're really dedicated, unless you're really dedicated, you don't know the inner world of the church, right? And I think that's actually appropriate, because it keeps the structure of the whole strong. It's like when you have a really great experience, like this profound experience, whatever it is, right? And then you go to someone, you're like with your friends at the coffee shop or the bar, and you try to relate that experience to them. And then when you're done, you kind of just feel cheap and hollow a little bit. You feel like, oh, I don't know. You walk away from the bar and you're walking home to your car like by yourself, and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have explained that. Right? And I think that feeling translates to that example of why it's important to keep certain things in the structure. And that doesn't mean the structure can't exist within other structures, but boundaries are very functional in organizations, because it allows within the organization people who are competent to function in that in ways that wouldn't be possible. And also, it's not good to explain everything to everyone. I don't think it's good to explain everything to everyone.
No.
Because most people haven't done the work to appreciate what you said. It's like you said, you have this, you're talking about, you're using the word nothingness, right? But unless you've done a lot of work, a lot of practice, then you probably, and you don't have an experience, people don't hear what you're saying. Right? They hear nothingness and they relate it to whatever they're thinking.
Their conceptual idea of nothing. Yeah.
But, so it goes right past them. And because it goes right past them, then it becomes a block for them.
Right.
In the future, because then they hear someone else talking and they're like, yeah, I've heard all these people talking about it,
right,
but I don't have any experience to relate it to, so then they begin to just undercut it and push it away, because then it validates their structure of seeing the world. So how do you then, it just doesn't, it cheapens the thing in a way. I sometimes feel like to talk about certain things too much with people who don't have experience with it.
Right.
Like, if I were to get really technical about trail running, right, or alpine running or anything like that, right, it wouldn't make any sense, because unless you're out there doing it, right, and you've had the experience and you've touched everything and over and over and over and over again, there's not like an experience. And it's the same thing you're talking about honey, right? They have to have the taste of the honey. Now, once you've had the taste of the honey, then we can have a conversation. Now I can point to, well, you should be careful of that type of honey because those bees get this flower, and that flower has this type of chemical in it that might not work so well, right? Kind of extending that analogy out, right? So then you can kind of like, okay, you should be careful here, you can look here, and that there might be something there for you. But the gateway is that tasting the honey first. And so it's one of the reasons I like the Mormons is because they have their inner world and they have their outer world.
Right.
They keep things organized.
Secret versus sacred, though. And like sacred is because there is a reverence and respect for what is going on, and it doesn't need a reward or a consequence. But being secret is much more manipulative because it carries consequences. And I think pretty much, again, there are wonderful ideas, and there are some people who take it serious and are reverent. Again, a huge difference in personal character, I think. There's, a different opinion for every single member of the church, all the way up the leadership and stuff. But I think, at some points, if you're going to run yourself as a corporation, it transmutes from something that is being sacred to something that is being secret. And not just like, companies have proprietary secrets because it's proprietary, but because if the people knew what it was that we were doing, then some of them, have independent thinking and will say something against us. And so when something starts to be operated as secret rather than sacred, that is a breach of, members' boundaries, of people saying, this is how far you can come into my life, and the rest of this place is my space. That's my personal space. And so when something is maliciously operated, something is given on good faith, but it is, a lot of organizations operate on, they will accept whatever is freely given, right? So things like tithing and stuff, where people are like, I'm helping someone, right? And I'm helping someone that's poor to educate or to build a temple or whatever it is. But that's not like how it's received. And part of that is much tied into modern complications and the way that churches are run, not a religion that transcends, a time and a place and a book or a building or back to like biblical populations and stuff, or even the Jewish faith and heritage, where sometimes you can't what is the word? Anyway, to disentangle, perhaps, you can't really pull that apart. And those elements are going to be within people who have genuine faith and adhere to the church and listen to, sometimes all someone has is in their perception, everything was positive about their experience, And then there are other people who are like, they can never see anything good because all they have received, is on the manipulation side, on the abuse side. And so it's like, it taints it. What if you're having like this great meal and then that back in the kitchen they dropped your stuff on the floor and just put it on a clean plate? And some people, they're fine with that, or they're not fine but won't complain. Other people are like, I deserve better than floor food, or, right, and will speak up to it. But, until, they understand that there's a difference there between, if the people in the back were working with a more truly aligned character, they'd be like, we just dropped your stuff, we're going to make you a new plate, just, and they come and they tell you.
Yeah.
But, if you have secrets, you're getting that dirty floor food. But that doesn't mean that the person receiving the end action there kind of deserves that just because they are faithful to an organization, to a theology or a dogma. Mm-hmm. But, so it's like, at one point I had like a superhero analogy that you don't think about, well, I want to save this person, fuck you, Larry, but I'm going to,
sorry, Larry.
A superhero just goes out and saves everybody, right? That's why they're the hero. That's why they're the superhero. Don't know that they necessarily fall in the transcendent sort of hero, because even if they save the whole city, it's still like within that performative social structure or whatever, right? So when you start choosing who gets to kind of benefit, when you have such a lovely platform where you could change the world, and whether it's the church, whether it's America, when you have this opportunity to do good for all sentient, to be in benefit to all sentient beings, or just some of the sentient beings, or
Larry.
Just provide for me
Everybody
and the rest
but Larry.
of you. Yeah, everybody but Larry.
Larry, but it starts at home though, right? Like if you can't take care of yourself, you're not going to be. You can't be a benefit yourself. You're not going to be a benefit to anyone else, right? So it's like start at home, and then you can begin to expand based on circumstance and level of competency and things like that, and aspiration.
And then you don't have to rely on an organization to give you that guidance. It's different to have mentors.
Again, I think it creates a really good foundation. I think most people function best with like foundation, and like a community that understands, because they all have a shared experience, so they can communicate with each other. They can talk to each other, right? They don't feel like they're all islands, right? They can talk to each other, and every organization has its challenges, and I can see what you're saying with the difference between secret and sacred, but I don't necessarily, I would think parse it a little bit differently, whereas some secrets can be done negatively and some secrets can be done to protect, right? Mm-hmm. So in a positive way, right? To protect the sacred, like you said. So I don't necessarily see it all bad versus, for secret, but and all organizations have their challenges.
Yeah.
And they're also trying to figure it out too, because they're organizations and it's a new world, and they're like, oh, I don't know. They're just people, right? They're like, well, I don't know, what do we do? We're a church, but we have a lot of money, and we can have some influence, and but where do we go? So I think they do a lot of good though in general, but obviously there are challenges with any organization.
Yeah.
But I always like to give a little bit of a plug, because something I think they get beat up on, even in our state. And again, think it goes back to that gratitude of we should always acknowledge where problems lie, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't applaud the things that are going well.
Right.
Because there's probably 30 things that are going well, otherwise it wouldn't even be a thing.
Right.
And there's like 2 things or 4 things in comparison that aren't going so well, so we applaud all of those things, and then just like the scientific or the engineering method, you iterate, like, okay, how could we possibly fix that? What would be the unintended consequences of these types of policy? We try to address this, and then we just tinker with it a little bit in those problem areas, but we go, oh yeah, most of this is good, but over here is a little bit of a challenge.
Right.
And how do we fix this part?
Right. Yeah.
We don't need to, be like Alexander when he got really drunk and he decided to burn down the entire temple. Because the Roman general was like, hey, let's burn this bitch down.
And he's like, yep.
Let's do it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And it's burned down the entire city.
It's all about, like you said, it starts at home. And that's mainly the antithesis, I suppose, to this entire podcast, right? Is like, you do have to do the work.
Yeah.
Right? This is fun to talk about. It's the whole point of doing the podcast. Otherwise, why wouldn't we sit and do the podcast? But the point is to take from the podcast, if you're going to take anything from it, is you better start doing the work, right? Because that's sort of it. And you'll never get what nothing is. Like, if you don't do the work, it'll just be some conceptual idea in your head, and that's not what we're going for, right? Like, the whole point of this is not so that you have this cute little idea in your head, but so that you can actually live that cute idea and recognize how deep and how ridiculously ground-shaking that idea itself is. Mm-hmm. You have to do the work first, which includes all that nasty shit.
It does. the fun part is kind of like, oh, that looks interesting over there. I wonder what's there.
Yeah.
It's like, here's something shiny.
Yeah,
right? Exactly. And then they go, oh, what's the shiny thing? And then you go, okay, here's what the shiny thing is. Okay, but now don't look at the shiny thing for a minute. Now you gotta do the work.
Okay, there's the shiny thing. Now do the work. You're gonna just look at the shiny thing.
If you do enough work, you might see the shiny thing again.
That's good. I like that. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. But this was awesome. I really appreciate you coming and hanging out, man.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll have to have you back on again if you're down.
Yeah, I'm good.
Do this again.
Yeah. Nice catching up with.
Yeah.
Something I haven't seen for so long.
I know, right? And just what a random way to meet back up. And
why not?
Absolutely. I mean, if there's one thing to recognize about nothing, it's that chaos is a perfect explanation for it. And that's, there's nothing to expect. There's nothing to anticipate, because there's no way you could do that.
Go with the flow.
Yep.
Because expectations ruin everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The hand that grasps for accomplishment uproots the garden.
Ah, yes, I like that. Is that a parable or something? What is that? Where did you find that beautiful quote?
Came out of me.
That just came out of you, man. That you may be the first quote that is actually said out of the guest that was on the show. Because I always do quotes for the thumbnails, right? That was a good quote. I really like that quote.
For a long time, I was kind of questioning, like, where's the accomplishment? Where's the accomplishment? Where's the accomplishment? So it had different businesses that didn't function, and they had a yoga studio in Sugar House, and it's like, there's certain things that you can point to maybe that are working and you can think of as an accomplishment, but really, where's the accomplishment? And even if you got the thing you wanted, where would the accomplishment be, right?
It's in the dirt.
But it's not there. Like,
it's in the digging.
Every time you try to, like, grab the accomplishment or find it, it's like a smoke and it just disappears.
It's gone, yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like the garden that you were cultivating through the work and the discipline is gone because you're trying to grasp at the accomplishment, and so then it's like you're stealing from the future. It's like you don't have the foundation, you don't have the competency, but you're trying to take and impose it now. It's like you're going against the universe to impose your will against the universe's will. Yeah. So the hand that grasps for accomplishment is uprooting the garden that feeds you. Yeah. Right? That is the result. The garden is the result. It's the process. It's the result. But the moment you grasp at it, it's gone.
Yeah.
You don't have it.
Yeah.
And when you look for it, it's gone. So that's where that came from.
I like that.
It's from that.
I like that.
Look what I did, and then it dies.
Yeah, no, for sure. Mm-hmm. For sure. It's that ego. It's that ego, like claiming authority.
Listening to Steve House, he's one of the best alpinists in the world. And he had just finished his climb. I'm going to butcher the name because I'm terrible at pronouncing some of these names. It's a mountain. It's one of the highest peaks in Pakistan.
Okay.
Naga Parbat. I'm terrible at pronouncing some of these names.
Good. You're good.
But anyway, so he finished his climb. He's down. He's getting an award for it because it's just crazy. It's a crazy climb, and he did it with one other person, like minimal. It was quite the feat. Anyways, and someone in the audience asked him, like, "How do you feel now?" And he goes, "Honestly, I feel lost. I just spent 16 years working for this.
Now what? You just did it. Yeah, you finished it now.
Where am I? Right? So there was no accomplishment.
Right.
Like the accomplishment was actually the process.
Yeah.
And now there's not an orientation. So that's why I think that when we go back to that orienting principle, what's that orienting motivational principle? That transcends. And that's why the Buddhists are so brilliant in that it is for them to be a benefit to all sentient beings, because that game is always there. Right? It doesn't just poof away like smoke. Right. But yet at the same time, there's nothing to grasp at and hold yourself up on either. Exactly. Right? You can't go, I'm so good. I just helped all these people. When you go, well, I would, great, but how do I keep doing it?
How do I continue?
How do I get better?
How does this continue?
Yeah.
How do I not go, cool, I've made it, because you haven't,
Yeah, and the moment you do that, then you've broken your vow.
Yep, exactly.
So that's why it's such a brilliant thing. You can almost think of it like a technology, right?
Yeah.
It's so brilliant because it hits on so many levels simultaneously. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I dig it.
Success.
I dig it. Well,
it was fun.
Thank you guys for chilling with us, and I suppose until next now.
I don't know what else I'll have to say.
We'll chat. No worries. No worries, man.
Said all my words.
Yeah, we'll chat about nothing. Peace, everybody.
Have a good one.